Charles, 79, could no longer live in his country house because his niece had decided to commit him to a nursing home. His greedy niece stopped him from fulfilling his dying wish to leave his house to a poor single mother. But when the young mother entered the house, she discovered something that changed her life forever. Charles had been living alone in his small but cozy country house since his wife's death. He had always been able to take care of himself and had never needed anyone else's help. Nonetheless, as he grew older, the difficulty of living alone increased. Even at the age of 79, he tried to keep the house and yard clean, although his energy and health could no longer keep up with his will. Charlie was changing logs in the fireplace when the ringing of his phone echoed through the house. On the other end of the line was his niece, who raised the same old subject again. "Uncle, we shouldn't even be talking about this. You need to go to a nursing home right now. There will be health professionals and everything else ready to take care of you in the best way possible," the young lady said respectfully. And she persisted, claiming that the older man would have activities to do and other people around him, so he would no longer be alone. Charlie listened to all the arguments and eventually decided to agree. He would live in a nursing home. In any case, he knew that his niece Sophia would insist until he agreed. Since the death of his only son, Charlie had no one else in his life except for Sophia, who, despite not visiting him, was rarely out of touch, always trying to persuade him to move out of his home. The elderly man agreed, but first he wanted to know what the young woman planned to do with the country house and its small plot. It included a lovely garden that his late wife had planted and that he had lovingly maintained over the years. Sophia listened carefully and decided that it would be best to sell the place. He only had one wish, and Charlie could keep all the money. And well, of course, I won't mind if you leave me a small commission, said the young woman in a playful yet mischievous tone. However, it seemed that Charlie had everything ready. Since he had agreed to go to the nursing home, he only had one wish, which was straightforward. He wanted to give his house to Emily, a neighbor. She was a single mother with 2 bright children, but due to the tragic consequences of life, she was living in a crumbling house that the city might condemn at any time. Even with a low rent, she was on the verge of eviction due to late payments. Since the first day she met Charlie, Emily had shown that she was honest and kind, so Charlie felt he had to help her. With 2 young children and no one to depend on, he felt such a wonderful woman should not have to live in such unhealthy circumstances. Sophia, however, didn't seem to like the notion and quickly expressed her displeasure to her uncle. She suggested that Emily might be a gold digger and that she didn't trust her. Sophia promised to see what she could do to satisfy her uncle's request, though, to reassure him and win him over to the idea of living in the nursing home. But the older man's niece and the single mother were unaware that Charlie would leave something in the cottage worth much more than the house itself. Emily was young, only 27, but the abandonment of her husband and the death of her mother, her only family, led her to a deep depression that hindered both her professional life and the well-being of her 2 children. Emily and Charlie had known each other for almost 2 years. It all started when the older man had been returning from the supermarket with an overstuffed shopping bag. Emily's eldest son rushed to assist the older man, carrying the loads for him. Then Emily and the kids assisted Charlie in carrying everything to his house. The young mother had no idea that the small act of kindness would herald the start of a significant change in her life. Emily had been assisting Charlie with small tasks in cooking since then. Since the death of his wife, the older man had been eating poorly. He'd never been a good cook, and he never planned his meals. Despite his repeated request, Emily never accepted any payment. She thought of her late father when she talked to Charlie, and it made her happy to help him. Furthermore, she had observed that Charlie had a solitary and frugal life, completely alone and without luxuries. and she was content with the small meals that the older man prepared for the young mother and her children, using what was left of his food. The years passed, and the two loners became unlikely friends. The older man occasionally invited the woman and her children to his house for lunch. They respected each other. Emily listened carefully to all of his advice, as if the older man had become a mentor to her. Charlie had even started to notice that the signs of his depression, which were caused by the death of his wife, were getting better. Meanwhile, Emily enjoyed the feeling that she was helping someone in need, while at the same time she had someone she could talk to about life, someone to whom she could vent, a true friend. When Charlie told Emily he was moving to a nursing home, he couldn't hold back the tears. He explained that his niece had been calling every week for 3 years to get him out of the country house, and he just didn't have the energy to argue about it anymore. As far as Charlie was concerned, he'd be happy living in his house until his last breath. After all, that house was built by him and his wife with their own hands. But in this life, we can't have everything we want, can we? Said the gentleman, resigned to his fate. Emily hugged him and told him he could always count on her for help. He thanked her for all she had done. "Emily, I appreciate you making me feel useful again." Charlie was transferred to a nursing home within a month. His niece Sophia took the initiative, chose the location, and quickly completed the paperwork. She didn't care about the older man's likes and dislikes because she hadn't asked him. Emily didn't get a chance to see Charlie move out. She only had a hunch that the older man had left because she never saw him again at the market she frequented or in the vicinity of his country house. Her children missed playing with the older man, who had been very close to them in recent years. So Emily went to the older man's country house from time to time, hoping to meet him there and say goodbye properly. But it wasn't Charlie whom she found. When the young mother came to visit, Sophia, his niece, was inside the house. She appeared to be stuffing dusty items into worn-out boxes. Emily approached her, thinking Charlie had told his niece about her to introduce herself or even offer assistance. However, as she introduced herself and asked about Charlie's whereabouts, "Get out of here, filthy. I know very well who you are, and I don't even want you to come near my backyard. Unlike my uncle, I won't keep giving you money to support your children or any of your addictions." Emily was stunned by the rudeness of Charlie's niece. She remained silent for a moment, unsure how to react or what to say. Sophia ignored Emily's attempts to reason with her. Then she practically kicked her off the property, threatening to call the police if she did not leave immediately. Emily was sickened by Sophia's rudeness, but she tried her best to overcome her shock and decided that she would try to find out for herself where Charlie was staying. Emily left her children at the community daycare and went early the next day to find Charlie. She knew there were only 3 nursing homes in the city, 2 of which were closer to the neighborhood and the third in a remote region. Her hopes were dashed after visiting the first 2 nursing homes, and her mood had never been lower. Since Charlie could be anywhere in the city or the country, after all, how could Sophia be sure that she hadn't placed her uncle in the most remote location possible? Emily distrusted his niece's nature and character, so she was prepared for anything. After missing a bus and walking for hours to reach the farthest nursing home in the city, Emily arrived at the reception, almost fainting from exhaustion. She asked if Charlie was a resident there and whether he could receive a visit. She asked that way as to not appear to be uninformed and to be shooed out of the place just like she had been from the old man's country house. And to her surprise, the receptionist said that the man was indeed, and that he could receive visits, but only from his family. "It's okay, I'm his niece," the young mother said without flinching, hoping to see her friend finally. "Oh yes, I was finding it strange to have only heard your voice all these weeks. You finally came to visit your uncle. I guess he could use some company," the nurse said. That made it clear to Emily that after the hospitalization, Sophia never looked for her uncle again. Emily hastened down the hallways as the visiting hours were about to end so she could enjoy the time she would still have with Charlie. In addition, she had to pick up her kids from the daycare in a short while. Everything was going well, and she was excited to see her friend, but she was shocked by what she saw. Her old friend appeared more ill and frail than ever. As he lay in bed with a dejected expression, the old man managed to nod his head and smile with his eyes when he saw Emily, and he asked the nurse to sit him down so he could talk to her. Emily sat down on the chair next to Charlie's bed, and he began to ask slowly how the woman was doing and about her children. Emily hated to break bad news, even more so for a man in that state, but she told the truth that even she herself would not want to believe. And she also said that her youngest son had been sick for a few weeks. However, the doctors still hadn't identified